Happy Sunday, everybody. From somebody who just turned 3/4 of a century. God, I love it. Thank you. Let's do this. Thank you, thank you. Welcome to the Sunday. Please welcome to the Beamer, Reverend Dr. Sheila Hughes.
Good morning. Well, actually, I'm just Dr. Sheila Hughes, not Reverend, but that's fine. All right, good morning. All right, welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living, Los Angeles. I'm Dr. Sheila Hughes, President of the Board of Trustees for our beloved community here, and it is my honor then to be your presider this morning. So as you can tell, Dr. Keith is away. He is celebrating a big birthday. I've talked to him recently, and he is enjoying himself immensely. Yesterday is his birthday, and he's celebrating then the whole weekend. And we are really blessed then to have as our guest minister this morning, Dr. Maureen Hoyt. Yeah. And she is going to inspire us, and I'm sure if our past experience is any indication, probably entertain us just a little bit too as well. So we come together every Sunday morning to gather and to be in community and be reminded of how to fulfill then our vision statement of supporting individuals, finding their personal self-empowerment through a spiritual awakening. So right now, I'm going to invite you to turn off any type of electronic devices that you may have, as Dr. Q says, unless it is life-sustaining. Don't turn that off. And as we do that, then let's also then say hello for those then who are on Facebook Live, as well as those who are on the live stream. All right, so I want to introduce you to our musicians then this morning, and they're going to share with us one of our songs, but I do want Andy Belling behind me, our co-music director, Pete Erlansky on bass, Joe Kellner on percussion. And of course, you all know and remember Stuart Elster. Elster, our guest musician on piano.
We're going to trade places? Yeah. You take my
Musical chairs.
Yeah.
Other acts.
It's on. Hello.
Andy got this bench up too. Okay, no worries. Andy and I are switching because I'm doing a different song today. I just wanted to talk a little bit about a genre of music that came to be known as smooth jazz. I guess, I don't know if everybody here is familiar with that term, but to us musicians, it seems like a watered down, commercial, fluffy kind of jazz that, or pseudo jazz that appeals to a mass audience. So it doesn't have the best connotation. But if we look back at the roots of this movement, and I want to go back to the 1970s, where some very talented jazz musicians and composers crafted songs and music to mix with popular music styles, mostly rhythm and blues and gospel, and created some very heartfelt, well-crafted music that later morphed into this smooth jazz phenomenon. Particularly, there was a TV show, most of you, I'm sure, have seen it, maybe some not, but called Taxi, which was just a wonderful show, just beautiful human stories, a lot of humor, and Danny DeVito got his start there, and Christopher Walken, and Judd Hirsch, Tony Danza. The theme song for that show became one of the blueprints for smooth jazz. It was written by a very talented pianist, composer in New York named Bob James, and it was actually not meant to be the theme song. He wrote the music for the show, but the third episode of the show, he wrote a song called Angela's Theme, which they took to be the theme song of the show Taxi. And it was known by millions and millions of people. It was a huge success. It's still played on all the smooth jazz stations to this day. And the key part of that was a relatively new instrument called the Fender Rhodes. It was an electric piano. That's why I came over to this side to play, and we're going to play the theme song from Taxi. Hope you like it. Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. So, as I said earlier, we are so blessed to have Dr. Maureen Hoyt with us this morning. She is a legend in New Thought. She thinks that's funny. Oh, she really is. In her own and in our minds too. All right, she's been in the ministry for years, and not only has she been the spiritual leader for Center for Spiritual Living in both Westlake Village and Granada Hills, she's taught countless students over the years. She's been editor and author for many publications for our philosophy, faith, and way of life. And she is a dear, dear friend, of course, of Reverend Dr. Keith Cox and of all of us here at the Center for Spiritual Living, Los Angeles. So I am so honored to welcome to the Bema Dr. Maureen Hoyt.
Thank you, Sheila. Well, I think I want to know that person. How are you? Good. Keith threw me a curve. He has changed the order of service up a little bit. And I think he's thrown us all a little curve. But we'll figure it out by the end of the year. How's that? Yeah, we will. I want to welcome you. Anyone here for the first time today? Yes, wonderful. Welcome, 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 welcome. And I also want you to know, Dr. Neal, when I told you earlier that none of my family would show up this morning, my sister Donna showed up. And she drove all the way from Hemet to come here, on her way to Sherman Oaks, actually, on her way to Sherman Oaks. So I'm so pleased to have her here. I'm so pleased to see everybody this morning. While the service has changed, the idea of the service has not changed. And Dr. Keith chose peace for us to focus on today as we begin the new year. I'm sure you'll agree with me that there is something in this idea of peace that we can all benefit from, whether it's our own personal peace or whether it's peace globally or whether it's peace for those who are experiencing emotional upheaval in their lives. Dr. Holmes, the founder of Science and Mind, educates us that peace is a quality of the divine that exists within each one of us. He also teaches us that we impact our lives. Now, this is scripted by Keith this morning, so you'll have to bear with me. He also teaches us that we impact our lives through our thoughts, beliefs, actions, reactions, and interactions of life itself. This is because we are conscious beings and live in a universe governed by spiritual law. So today, let's use our mind, our action, in a way to propagate peace. Dr. Keith often shares an acronym for peace. Purposeful energy activates conscious energy. Purposeful energy activates conscious energy. So let's focus on this energy purposefully this morning as we perform this ritual. I think it's right now, Andy, that you're going to do the peace song, right? And come forward. Connie Schneider is going to light the peace candle for us. And we are going to sing the peace song together right now.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as creator, united all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now when
this be my solemn vow. We break each moment to live each moment with peace eternal. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Thank you very much. So, breathe. Breathe into this idea that God is all there is. That as this candle is lit, the light from this candle reminds us that we are the light of the world, that we are here as emissaries of hope, and to be the encouragers for whatever might be going on in our own lives and the lives of other people. And so this morning I recognize the power and presence of Spirit by means of every person sitting here in this sanctuary, every person in our circle of influence, everybody in this city of Los Angeles, everybody in this county of Los Angeles, everybody in the state of California, and the entire world. That there is possibility when we think in terms of what it is that we are here to do. What is our potential? What is it that we have created as a purpose to be here today? And I believe that for religious scientists, it is about making a difference. Making a difference because of thinking that is positive, upbeat, that becomes natural after protracted use. And so I know today for all of us that we are here by divine appointment. We are here to share who and what we are, and we are here to know that God is. I am, we are, and so it is. So is this where I start talking? Oh, good. I have so many things to say this morning. You have no idea. It's an interesting time for ministers around the country. I was in the pulpit for 25 years. I retired 3.5 years ago, and as I look back on my ministry, the first 4 chapters of The Science of Mind are what we're doing in January. And I have done 25 years worth of those 4 talks. And it's interesting to figure out how to do it creatively. So this is my 101st talk of one of the first 4 chapters. It's the thing itself is the first chapter, which is God, Spirit, the universe, the force, whatever it is that you love, whatever it is that you choose to call God. The second chapter is the way it works. And as you learned from Keith last week, the way it works is by working through us. The way God works in our lives is by working through us. And this week we'll explore what it does, what God does by means of each one of us. Ernest Holmes said, "The divine mind is infinite. It contains all knowledge, wisdom, but before it can reveal its secrets, it must have an outlet. This outlet we shall be compelled to supply through our own receptive mentalities." That is the definitive saying in that chapter of The Science of Mind. I am God's outlet on this plane of consciousness. You are God's outlet on this plane of consciousness. So when we decide to explore the possibility of having a better life, more money, more abundant good health, maybe a better job, a compatible relationship, God is at the ready to provide it for us, just so long as we have a receptive mentality to these ideas. You know, the best job just doesn't show up for everybody, right? How many of us have been in really kind of poopy jobs in a lifetime? Yeah, a few of us, right? And the definitive words are receptive mentality. None of us is capable of having the best job, the best relationship, optimum health, and lots of money without some level of responsibility. And that's what Ernest is trying to tell us in this chapter. I must be the receptive mentality to this idea, but I have to take some responsibility for that. I have to figure out ways in which to support the idea that I am the circuit through which God works in this world. A friend called me yesterday. She's a staff minister at another center, and she was asked to do the talk for today. And she wanted my perspective on how a person can embody this teaching in a greater way. And I said to her, the simple answer is pay attention. You know, just pay attention. Watch what's going on around you. Pay attention to what's coming into your mind subconsciously, not subconsciously if you're paying attention, with commercials on TV. Watch what kind of stuff you're putting into your head through what you're reading, or how you're reacting to what's going on around us. And she thought about that for a little bit. You know, sometimes we don't even notice our demonstrations. We don't even notice that our good is coming to us. Someone takes us to lunch, and we say, oh, wow. We argue about paying the bill with them. You know, we don't just automatically receive. I'm not the receptive mentality for there is a free lunch periodically, right? There is a free lunch, right? So I'd done a spiritual mind treatment for about the last 5 months for a friend of mine who was selling his dad's house. And his dad had passed away, and he inherited this house. They fixed it up, and it was ready for sale. It's in the Florida Keys, and they had a hurricane in between, so they had to refix it up. You know how that goes sometimes. Anyway, they took it off the market the first part of December because it hadn't sold, but he'd neglected to tell me that, so I just kept treating. And Lenore knows who I'm talking about. And so I got a phone call from him saying that the house is sold. And I went, well, there you go. God is demonstrating. You know, what it does, God demonstrates. And the story around getting it sold is long and involved, and I'm not going to share that this morning. But last Monday, I went to my mailbox, and there was a card from my friend Mark with 10 $100 bills in it. And I thought, well, isn't God cute? You know? I had just surrendered all the money I had spent at Christmas time on Christmas presents and said, okay, I'll figure out how to pay it some way. And Mark sent me 10 $100 bills. So there you go. Simple demonstrations, simple demonstrations. By noticing the small things, the lunches, parking spaces, which is Science of Mind 101, you know, demonstrating parking spaces, it primes the pump for us to begin to really notice the possibility of bigger demonstrations in our lives and the good that God has in store for us. Dr. Walker always used to say, don't ever let your good get in the way of the best. You know, we are intended to live a superlative life experience, right? So focus on your good, but also aim for the best. I have 2 examples, or actually I think 3 examples to share with you today on what God does for us with stories to support the demonstrations. Ernest tells us in this chapter that the universe is impersonal. It gives to all alike. It is no respecter of persons. You know, no one is exempt from their good. Ours is not a capricious, judgmental God, you know, the white-bearded guy up in the heavens that's giving something to Lenore, Matt standing out in the lobby drinking his coffee, or because Lenore's been a good girl, she gets this. Well, Matt, not so much. He doesn't, he doesn't get it. So that was the concept that we had growing up. For me, it was the good and bad, you know, the polarities of life, the pairs of opposites, right or wrong. You know, either you were right or you were wrong. There was no in between. And I've since learned that everything is an in-between. It isn't either or, it's both and. It's both and. You know, there is right, there is wrong, and there's both and. So God is simply there for us to place our desires into the universe and have those desires demonstrated. Well, you might say skeptically, that's just too simple. That's just way too simple. Is it really that easy? And yes, it really is that easy. Maybe I've told this story here before, but there's a few new people, they can hear it. And if you hear it again and you remember it, that means you had to hear it again, right? But I know what it is for me is I have to say it again because I have to remind myself. I don't ever say anything that I don't need to hear. I don't think that you need to hear what I have to say. I need to hear what I have to say. So years ago, I worked in a financial planning office in Westlake Village, and I was at the front desk. And that particular day was a Monday, and my friend Margaret was coming to visit me from San Bernardino, and Margaret is fastidiously clean and everything in its place and a place for everything, and she's horribly hard of hearing. So she was coming to meet me, and I would then take us to lunch. Well, I had a Toyota Previa at that time, and I'd been hauling football players around. My son was playing high school football, and there was grass and clods of dirt in the car. And then to make matters worse, my kid's dad had gone and picked up manure to reseed the lawn with my car. So not only was it dirty, it was stinky to boot. So I just thought, oh, wait a minute. Margaret's not coming to see my car. She's coming to see me, right? And I totally and completely surrendered it and said, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Not 30 seconds later, the front door of the office opened. A guy sticks his head in and says, anyone need their car detailed? Think about that. 30 seconds. I surrendered it. I let it go. And there it was. Surrendering it to a greater idea. The greater idea, Margaret coming to see me and not my car. And this is an important part of our treatment. I understand Keith is doing something with David Hawkins, that you're studying with him. Well, in Power versus Force, which is my favorite David Hawkins book, power, positive life-affirming word. Force, not so positive, more on the negative connotation side. Surrender, positive, life-affirming. Giving up, as in, just resignation kind of thing, not so powerful and not so good. So if you have a mind to read the book, you'll get a sense of the words that we use do have power because it's the intention behind it. We don't have to be or do anything special because, as I said, our version of God is impersonal. And we've heard that time and time again in this teaching. God wants to shower its blessings upon us, and we have to be the receivers of those blessings. It's as simple as that. As simple as that. The sad part for some of us is that we have a worthiness quotient. And it's usually way, way below the good, which is waiting for us. I've had that experience time and time again. I'd had to raise my glass ceiling of receptivity. What is it that I see as the ceiling? What is the most I can receive without feeling guilty about it? Ernest says, the laws of the universe are to be trusted. He says, we must come to understand them before we can use them. Once understood, any law is available and is impersonally responsible to each and each alike. Maybe we hold our good at bay because we've grown up with the idea that it's not right for us to have more than somebody else, or it's not right for us to have too much, or that someone else will have less because we have more. Or again, there's that worthiness challenge that some of us have. I can't have my good because my mom and dad didn't have their good. And I can't have more than they did. That's like old thinking. That's thinking that no longer serves us. Because if I have what I think is too much, then there's something wrong with it. But if I have what I think is a lot and it's really wonderful, then I get to share that with other people. I get to tithe. I get to do all kinds of things that give me such incredible pleasure. You know, there are no weights and measures in the mind of God. There are no comparisons in the mind of God. And there is nothing ever lost in the mind of God. Our God is impersonally responsive to each and all alike. You know, listen carefully today, because it is my intention to shed light on places you never knew were dark. You know, there's an aspect to this chapter that just really got me in the heart space today. The second story. A year ago, in December 2018, I'd had my annual eye exam and ended up buying sunglasses as well as regular glasses. And the combined cost was close to $900 for both the glasses, the exams, that stuff they put in your eyes, they dilate your pupils, they check you for glaucoma, all of those kinds of things. And imagine my chagrin and dismay when, after speaking at Burbank Unity last December, that following Sunday, the week after Christmas, I couldn't find my reading glasses when I got home. I had changed my clothes and got my comfy clothes on and was ready to sit down and read the current book I was reading. And I looked everywhere. I even went back downstairs to look in my car to see if they had fallen out in the car. They weren't in the car. I called Burbank Unity. They were having a board meeting. Somebody answered the phone. The glasses weren't there. I checked my purse 3 times. I mean, it's like something was going to pop up in there the third time that wasn't there the first 2 times, right? I went in the bathroom. I did everything. It was at the very least annoying. And yet, I'm a good religious scientist. So I surrendered my glasses and my annoyance to mind, letting go. Remember, nothing is ever lost in mind. I want you to know that the law that we hear so much about in this teaching is the servant of the conscious mind. So when we have an idea we want to see demonstrated in our life, I must first embrace it wholly and completely. And consciously, that's the definitive word here, release it to the law. So December 15th, just this past 2019, I spoke at Granada Hills that Sunday. And that morning, I grabbed my one and only Christmas-like dress that I own to put on. And as I threw the dress over the top of my head, I heard a clank on the floor. And I looked down. There's my glasses. I had hung my dress up with my glasses attached to the front of the dress the following year. And I hadn't worn the dress because it was a Christmas dress. I hadn't worn it for an entire year. And there were the glasses apparently hooked to the front of my Christmas dress. Does anybody else find that funny? Because I thought it was hysterical. And I stood there looking down at the glasses like as if, wait a minute, I lost them. And now I found them. What's up with that? You know, it was a strange moment. There is nothing ever lost in mind. Nothing ever lost in mind. So that's story number 2. Ernest says, since an understanding of any law must pass through our conscious mind before we can make use of it, it follows that with all our getting, we should get understanding. You know, this isn't about putting stuff in. It's about having the understanding so it can move out from us. You know, when we have an understanding of how this principle works, it works for everything. You know, it works for everything, even when we're having a bad day. I created that at some level because there's something that I need to know about whatever it is that was involved in that bad day. And that's a hard lesson for some of us. I am cause to my own effect. I'm cause to my own effect. And there's no way of getting around that. It doesn't matter if you're a religious scientist. This is how it works for everybody. For everybody. So Is the thing I desire to experience so far-fetched that it would never materialize in my life because I do not have the wisdom to handle the enormity of it? That could be. That could be. Or is my vision so limited in its proportion that based on past experience, my demonstration doesn't take place, so I believe it will never take place? That could be too. These are questions I think that we all struggle with. We all struggle with them periodically until we can see the evidence of God at work in our lives. You know, I'll see it when I believe it, or I'll believe it when I see it. How does that work for us? Perhaps our beliefs are the obstacles to our progression in life. What belief system do I have to surrender as a structure of knowing so that I can have a different experience of life? What belief are you willing to give up today? One thing. The one thing that you could give up today that if you gave up that thing would change the trajectory of your whole life. What is that for you? I pretty much know what it is for me. You know, when I first came to this teaching, I was desperately unhappy. We often hear that those of other faith traditions who show up here do so out of desperation or inspiration. I mean, you've heard that before, I'm sure. The defining moment for me came when I understood for the first time what Ernest Holmes meant when he said, life always becomes to us the particular thing we need when we believe that it becomes to us that particular thing. I had to have that explained to me over and over again. You know, until I believe that something is possible, it's not going to show up in my life. So I have to work on my possibility ideas over and over and over again. You know, when I find myself letting go of something, it's because there's incoherence. You know, I'm frustrated. When I'm frustrated, I have to figure out that there's something I need to do in order to not be frustrated anymore. Because then the next step to incoherence is, what is the next step? Let me see if I can divine it from you. So the first step is frustration. The second step is resignation. And the third step is cynicism. I don't ever want to get to the cynical point in my life, because that means I've just totally given up. So frustration, when you feel frustrated, know that it's something that each one of us has to work on. So the question, what was going on for me is I had challenges with my mother growing up. I was in a difficult marriage, and it just wasn't working. The question I had to answer, what was my role in these relationships? What was my role? Gosh, I hated that question. You know, I wanted them to be fully responsible for what was going on. And even more heart-wrenching, who was the common denominator in both of these relationships? Oh, geez. That would be me. You know, in the first year class, we should also include a silver bullet for people to bite on, because they're going to find out that, you know, victim consciousness isn't about anybody else. It's about me. It's about me. We find out about our personal responsibility, and sometimes it's almost too much. There are so many people who come to our teaching and don't get through first year because they can't handle the idea that there is personal responsibility to being a good religious scientist. When I was told by my teacher to see my mother and my husband differently to affect change in our relationship, I wanted to argue with them vehemently. My identity was wrapped in how they'd done it to me. You know, my challenges with them were so unconscious and predicated on a before religious science mentality that first I was told to work on myself, and second I could work on them. But I never got to them because I'm still working on myself, right? And you find that, you find that. You know, it's interesting that they're still the same, but I tolerate them better. I tolerate them better. Now, I don't live with my husband anymore, my kid's dad, but I can be with him for 4 hours that I can't be with him for a lifetime. What needed to change was how I perceived them. So, I became the avenue for change. This is what it does. Years ago, one of the icons of our movement, Raymond Charles Barker, who had this huge center in New York City, they met in Alice Tully Hall. It seats, about 2,000 people in there or something like that. And one of the talk titles that he announced on the marquee in front of the theater was How to Change Other People. And he had the best attendance, standing room only. Standing room only. And of course, the joke was we cannot change anyone else but ourselves. And most of the people in attendance got the message loud and clear. But there were some people who felt fooled by the lost leader. But he made his point. He made his point. There must be conviction in what it is that we desire to experience in life. Mind works every time, or it doesn't work at all. Mind works every time, or it doesn't work at all. Don't we all want to have a better experience of life? I know I do. And if you do too, then we're all in this together. Change is inevitable. Progression is choice. Our progress is totally contingent upon our doing the work. The work. We cannot say God isn't generous when we aren't in gratitude for what we already have. We cannot bemoan the fact that someone else's life seems better than ours when they're doing their spiritual practice on a daily basis. And we're just wishing we had a daily practice. When we think, something happens to thought. Something always happens. When we reduce all things to a thought, we can change that thought and life changes accordingly. That's Ernest Holmes telling us, this is really simple, but it's not always easy. It's a simple concept. But sometimes, I was talking to somebody yesterday and I said, she was talking about a friend of ours who's really challenged right now. And I said, she has to let go, but she's never let go of anything that didn't have claw marks on it. That's true for a lot of us, isn't it? It's true for a lot of us. So our job is to be mindful about, I'm talking long today. Almost finished. Yes, thank you. So our job is to be mindful about what we're thinking and to stand guard. What I think I am. Are my thoughts centered in truth? Or are they not? Are my thoughts for the highest and best of myself and those I love? If not, I might have some work to do. If so, keep it up and keep those thoughts coming. So the last story about what God does in our lives has to do with everything I've shared today. When my mother passed away several years ago, I received her engagement ring. It was a tiny engagement ring with a very tiny diamond in it, but it meant the world to me. And my best friend had died by her own hand, and I had her wedding band. So I would wear my mother's engagement ring and my friend Ruth's wedding band on my pinky finger. And my other two sisters got the other wedding rings. You have it on today? So cute. She's my visual aid. She's my visual aid. Yes. So this engagement ring meant a great deal to me. As I got ready for bed one night, I got home from the church, got ready for bed. I was taking my clothes off. I had an open weave sweater on, and as I took the sweater off, my right hand snagged in the sweater. And I looked down and pulled the sweater apart from the ring and noticed that the prongs were open on the diamond ring and the diamond was gone. And it's one of those unbelievable experiences where I looked down and I thought, oh, darn, but it was another word that I said. Yes, I won't say that from the pulpit. The next day, I searched the entire Granadios Center for this diamond, and the kids had worked with glitter on Sunday, so you can imagine what that was like. Every piece of glitter became this diamond. And so this was several years ago that I lost it, and I don't think I ever told you this. So now I'm divulging it from the pulpit, but you weren't supposed to be here to hear it this morning. So I kept the setting, but mourned the loss of the diamond, as you can imagine. Always thinking, maybe I would have it reset someday. About 3 years after this incident, I moved to Westlake Village to take over that pulpit. And one day, I was walking across the parking lot of the church to go to my car. I noticed something sparkling on the ground and bent down to pick it up. Now, it would be really far-fetched if I told you that it was my mother's diamond, but that wasn't what it was. It was an entirely intact engagement ring, almost identical to my mother's engagement ring. I alerted the management company that I'd found it and put a notice in our constant contact, but after a month, nobody came forward to retrieve the ring, and I got to keep it. I got to keep it. So some of you might know who James Van Praagh is. He's the guy that talks to dead people, and we had him at the center, and he shared with me at the end of one of his services. He said, this is not open for discussion or publication, but he said, something's coming to me from this gathering of people. He said, there's somebody here who's recently found a diamond ring. The hair on my arm stands on end when I say it. And when I said it, and the Michael DeFibo, the staff minister, was sitting next to me. I think even in death, he probably still has the imprint of my hand on his arm. So he said, James Van Praagh said, your mother tells me that she realized how sad you were that you had lost her diamond, and that she found a way for you to still have a remembrance of her in somebody else's diamond ring. Well, I sat there and started sobbing. And Michael DeFibo had no clue why I was sobbing, and neither did anybody else around me. But the bottom line today is what God does. It does for us and through us. How much of the infinite good is ours? All of it. All of it. As Dr. Walker again used to say, don't let your good get in the way of the best. And how much of that infinite good that God has in store for us may we have to use. Again, all of it, as much as we can embody, knowing that with God, all things are possible. There you go. I talked a lot, and so it is. Okay. Let me see. What am I supposed to do here, Sheila? Oh gosh, do I really need to do that? I mean, I don't mind doing it. Keith said, you'll probably have time to have a Q&A after you finish talking. Well, I talked so long that maybe we don't have time for the Q&A. But does anybody have a question they would like to ask me about something?
Do you have the diamond ring on you now?
I actually was going to wear it this morning, Joanne, but no. I did not. No. Oh, well, that was a good question, though. A very good question. And it's symbolic of so many things. There's nothing ever lost in the mind of God. I keep going on and on about that. We used to pray to St. Anthony in the Catholic Church. Remember that? Yeah. Yeah, pardon? You still do? Yes. Well, there you go. Covering all bases. Yeah.
In the synagogue, the Jewish tradition, they would say, hey, turn over a glass.
Yeah, turn over a glass.
Turn over the glass.
My mother used to do that. She wasn't Jewish, but that's kind of good to know. No. I almost became Jewish because of the food. You know, that was, yeah. Yes. Okay, we could go on like this. So there's a repartee. Give me a microphone and we'll have a stand-up comedy routine before we're done. Any other questions? Yes.
In treating for the man with the property, what was the most significant thing that you focused on so the sale of that property would be immediate?
That is a perfect question. And I'll tell you, I don't ever treat at the level of effect. So it really wasn't the treating for the sale of the property. It was for Mark's receptivity to the buyer and being able to release the property to somebody who really wanted it. And they were using it as a rental. Okay, I'll finish the darn story. They were using it as a rental, and he lives in Scottsdale, and they were driving home one day, and the phone rang, and he didn't recognize the phone number. And he thought it might be a robocall, but he answered it anyway. And the guy said, "Is this Mark Johnson?" He said, "Yes, this is Joe Dokes," whatever his name was. And he said, "I'm renting your property in the Keys." And he said, "I want to buy it." And Mark goes, because they'd taken it off the market, right? And he didn't know what the ramifications were for the other seller who had the MLS, if it was totally and completely okay. He said, "But we have people renting it up to the 1st of April. And the guy said, "Well, this is all cash, no contingencies, nothing. We want this property, and as is." And so Mark went home and they looked at the situation. They got everything. When I said to Mark about 3 months ago, I said, "You know, Mark, I have this feeling it's going to be an unusual sale." And when he said, this guy showed up, he said, "You can't get much more unusual than that." So the all-cash offer covered all the refunds for the people who'd rented the place up until the 1st of April. And the only other part that's outstanding right now is that the pier that they have, it's an oceanfront property, buckled during the hurricane, and it has to be retrofitted. And there's $50,000 that's going to cost. The guy said, "No, never mind." He said, "I'll pay my 25 if you pay 25. So it was like, you know, I have a saying, if it's right, make it easy. If it's wrong, make it obvious. And this was so right, the way it worked. And his partner, his husband, handled the sale of the property himself, so no commission had to be paid. It's like this, like, Mark, you freaking lead a charmed life. And yet, he's so steeped in principle. He's a religious science minister. He's so steeped in principle. This is how it works. I don't ever treat for the effect. I treat for the consciousness of health. I treat for the consciousness of wealth. I treat for the receptivity to the right and perfect job. I treat for the receptivity to the right and perfect relationship. Because if I'm not in a good relationship with myself, I can't expect anybody else to show up to help me with that. Show Me the Money. What was that movie? What? Jerry Maguire. He killed it for all of us. You complete me, you know, that kind of thing for right and perfect relationships. No, I'm complete and then you show up. That's how it works, you know. Yeah, so did I answer anything, or did I, again, overboard? Too much information. Anything?
His house in Hawaii, his house, and now he's a better thing with Ryan up in Washington State. So that door opened in one.
Yes. When the volcano erupted, Mark and Ryan's house in Hawaii was in line of the lava flow. It's under 30 feet of lava. But some guy was taking pictures the day the houses were still standing on the first eruption, and they thought they had missed that devastation the first time around, so the houses were standing. And with the volcanic eruption, the heat comes from underneath up. And some guy was there taking pictures of Mark's ohana, the guest houses, the garage, and the duplex, and the main house burning down, and their fire insurance covered everything. because it wasn't destroyed by the overflow of the lava. So this is somebody who is, he could be evangelical in his proportions, going around the country speaking about how science of mind has worked in his life. And we all have the capacity for that. And not to say that he doesn't get down in the dumps periodically, because he does. And those times are so few and far between. But it's because there's something he needs to know about that experience to make him a better religious scientist. So, yes. Anything else? Time? Okay, thanks. Thanks, everybody. Okay. Sheila, you're on. Then do I come back up here after? No. Okay, I'll stay here.
All right. Oh my goodness, right? Oh gosh, yeah. Now, I don't know about you all, if you heard at least 5 or 10 things that you needed to hear this morning. I know I did. You know, one of the things we're going over, but it's okay. For me, was in what you said about what belief or what limiting belief then do I get to give up today that if I did would change the trajectory of my life. Okay. Well, that's something to think about, right? Okay. So, with that, let's just all take a breath. Whew. All right. And I'm going to ask our ushers to come up, and we will do our conscious giving. Okay, so now is the time then to support our community then financially. So please know that each and every dollar then that you give goes to supporting us making a difference in the world. As well, it keeps us bringing good to our community through our education, through Sunday services, through amazing music, and even more. So there are several ways to give. We accept obviously cash or check, which you can put into the bags as they come around. And at the welcome table, a credit card. You can also give through the app, which is what I did today, CSLLA, which you can get through the App Store, or then on our website, which is csl-la.org. So as we go ahead and do this, then, we're doing things a little bit different. So we do have a new song. The words to that song are actually on your handout.
My decision, it's up to me to give of my heart. Love is my decision. No one else can tell me to start. And once I decide to change my mind, Source will show me how. Love is my decision right here and now.
Thank you. So just a couple of quick reminders. Dr. Keith is teaching a free class on Thursdays. David Hawking, The Map of Consciousness, and I understand then that it was a wonderful success last week. It will continue again this week on Thursday. Please look for your newsletter then that you're beginning, that goes out in the mail each Tuesday. all of the information that you need for the week, and there's also something that Dr. Keefe also has there to bless us during the week that's there. Next Sunday is our Bring a Friend to CSL Day, and certainly I hope you all bring one or two. And why don't we make the following Sunday, bring them back to CSL? Okay. Any other information that you may need, look on the TV in the lobby, also in the newsletter, the website, and social media. That information will be there. There's coffee and tea and goodies there then in the lobby. I want to briefly thank everyone who is a part of this service today. Just hold your applause till we're done. So Reverend Lenore, then who is our practitioner of the day, Matt Fonda, then who is our board member on duty, who is out in the back there, Connie Snyder, who is our illuminator, Sherry Bazanis at the welcome table, Jesus Reyes and Travis Smith with setup and audio, and of course our musicians, Andy, Pete, Joe, and Stuart, and our amazing, wonderful, special guest minister this morning, Dr. Maureen Hoyt.
Here, here.
All right. So our musicians are going to do one more song, I believe, and is that right? Yep. Okay.
I know for sure that you'd pay big bucks and have a 2-drink minimum wherever you went to hear this kind of music.